Hello and welcome to the next MinotaurZombie review/thoughts, this time on the Banner Saga, a unique little turn-based strategy game formed by actually a trio of indie developers from BioWare. I did not know that until I did a little research afterwards, which is very interesting. And it's a turn-based strategy game that kind of takes this Viking aesthetic, mixes it a little bit with Oregon Trail. Now the plot starts off with you following a few different characters. There's the gigantic Varl creatures that have horns and pretty much are the main Viking people of this game. They're a different race from the humans. Then you follow a band of humans as they flee their home from the Dredge. And what the Dredge are is this overwhelming force that ages ago attacked everyone and almost basically took over the world and destroyed everything. But at the last moment, we were able to fend them off. But they have returned. Also, you are stuck in this wintry Viking wasteland where the sun never sets, as the gods of old have perished. It's up to you, leading your band of villagers, to guide them across the frozen wastes to get to safety as the Dredge close in. Now, while this story idea certainly isn't unique, see also Dragon Age Origins, see also pretty much every Tolkien-esque fantasy game ever, this game presents it in a really well done way where it focuses more on the characters and the relationships, more so than just the overwhelming odds of, Judge coming to destroy everything. I mean, it has that, but it focuses a little bit more on the characters and their interactions. And throughout the game, it's basically split into two parts. You have the turn-based tactical part, which there's nothing quite like it. It's a little bit Final Fantasy Tactics in that it's grid-based, but it's a lot more than that. Now, the other section is where you make decisions as the leader of the group as you travel across the wastes. There's really two ways to do this. There's the roguelike way, where you're given a set of options. You pick one and a few different outcomes could happen. I kind of like FTL, where you could say, I want to take on the giant spiders. And sometimes it'll be alright, but most of the time the giant spiders will kill someone. In this game, all the story choices are set. You're presented with a list of options as far as how you want to tackle scenarios, and whatever you pick determines the outcome. There is no random chance involved. Now, there's pluses and downsides to this. On one hand, it allows for greater story depth with your choices, but on the other hand, it makes subsequent playthroughs less interesting. Because my main issue with this system is that there's almost always a right choice and a wrong choice and maybe a few neutral choices in between. So it usually boils down to one choice is good and will net you like renown, which is your currency/experience. Or the neutral choice, maybe nothing happens. And then the wrong choice is everyone dies and you lose food or something. There are some great moments where your choices do have a significant impact on the story. I will say that, and that's what I really enjoy about the system. And I don't want to say that the story's bad, because it's actually pretty good. But there's a few moments where the choices just didn't sit well with me. I think the best example is I get to a town, and by the way, my caravan is like hundreds of people by this point. I'm like the most charismatic leader of all time. And I get to this city, and you can tell, it's shifty, everyone has the windows boarded up, it's a rough neighborhood, everyone is out for themselves. I come back to my cart, and I get a message saying, someone stole some food. And I have a few lists of options, and I choose the one that says, chase after the guy who took the food, because you see him running away. So I get into a battle, and I do that. And then I get another message saying, you come back to the cart, and while you were off chasing him, they stole more food. I'm sorry, it's one of those things where I feel like I was not given a lot of information or it doesn't make sense. Are you telling me like all 300 people of my caravan ran with me like an angry mob through these streets after this one person? It's choices like that just really bug me. And sometimes the choices that you think would have a huge... there's no spoilers here, by the way, but sometimes the choices you think would have a dramatic impact, or they really should have a dramatic impact, have nothing at all. And then sometimes the most minuscule choices turn out to really bite you later on. It's a mix of both. Some of it's done really well, some of it's done not so well, and it bugs me. Like sometimes, air quotes, right choice to get the good stuff is something that is so like, no reasonable person would ever make that choice. You know, it's kind of like, it's like run into the enemy lines of fire like an idiot. Oh, you picked the right choice. It just seems to be whatever the developers wanted the right choice to be without much rationale for it sometimes. Now, as I said, all the characters are really strong, and, you know, I really did find myself greatly attached to the characters. They give you just enough depth. Like, usually when you have someone new join in, you will get a little conversation with them to learn more about them. The only unfortunate part, and now that I know it's BioWare developers, it actually makes more sense to me how it focuses on characters so much and those little dialogue trees. So the thing I really like is you get that, but it seems like once you get that initial dialogue tree and learn about them, a lot of times it just stops. It just stops, and that's it. This could be because the game is very willing to just kill off your party members very randomly. Sometimes it's from your choice, sometimes it's inevitable. And a lot of times, you know, you'll make a choice and it'll be like the most random, you know, it'll be like, this person died because of your choice. You could have never seen that coming. And so this is one of those games, and you do spend experience on these people to level them up. You do not get it back. Just a quick warning to people that are like, I can't handle random character deaths. You are going to be so frustrated throughout this game. It's done to great story effect. It's great in the story. But, man, it's like Game of Thrones over here with people dying randomly. And, you know, if you really can't handle your best party members dying or leaving or whatever, you're going to be really frustrated throughout the game because it happens an awful lot. Overall, though, I did enjoy the story enough to really make me excited for the second Banner Saga, which continues it, and I'm hoping it fills in some of the choices I made and some of the plot holes that I feel like should have been expanded on. Into the gameplay. Now, this is interesting. This is like the real meat of the game, and it's so unique. All of your characters will all have their own one unique ability and one passive. That's not that strange. And the unique ability a lot of times will be shared between many members of, you know, I guess you could say the same class. But the way the battle system works is it is turn-based, and you alternate with the enemy taking turns. So this means that character A will move first, then character A on the enemy team will move next, then character B on your team will move, and character B on the enemy team. But the interesting thing about this is that this system means that overwhelming numbers are not necessarily a good thing. In fact, one of the best strategies in this game is to not necessarily whittle your, you know, prey on the small weak ones or the big fast ones, or the big ones really fast, like a lot of other games. A lot of games will be like, prioritize a single target and take them down one by one. That's not a good strategy in this game for two reasons. One, the turn order, but two, the way they handle both HP and attack power. Because they're one and the same. Yeah, that's right. Being at low health actually means your attack power is reduced. You basically have two bars. You have your armor, which directly just, you know, you have 12 armor, it cuts 12 damage off your attacks. So you can do armor breaking attacks to basically soften them up for a big blow. Then, if you do, they call it strength or HP attacks, that reduces that. And how much damage you do is only equal to whatever your strength is. So you quickly find out one of the best strategies is to try and just weaken everyone and not necessarily kill them, because then their turn comes up and they basically waste an enemy's turn, gives you a little bit of breathing room. It's an interesting dynamic that I've never seen. I've never seen it done in a turn-based strategy game like this, and it keeps it interesting all the way to the end, because the abilities, there's so many interesting abilities between the characters that are not your standard fare for a game like this. A lot of times just be like big damage or, you know, something to that effect. But the way the passives and the skills work, you can kind of combo them into one another or plan ahead. For example, there's an archer that allows you to basically lay a trap arrow, and if the enemy walks into it, it ends their turn as well as dealing some damage. Or there is a firebomb that leaves a scorched earth tile that burns the enemies as they walk through it. It's this interesting dynamic that works really well because it never feels like you're out, you know, just because you're outnumbered doesn't mean you're out of the fight. Certainly having fewer characters is a disadvantage. In fact, when you get down to your last when either side has only one unit left, it goes into pillage mode where it's just a free-for-all. You know, if I have 5 units left and the enemy has 1, I'll get 5 turns in a row. Then it's no holds barred. I absolutely really like the combat in this game. Definitely a highlight for me. The level up system is interesting too. As you kill enemies or as you make choices, you'll gain renown. And renown doubles as your currency and experience. So if you want to level a character up and get 2 additional stat points to put wherever you want, you need to spend renown on that. If you want to buy items to equip to your characters, you gotta buy that. If you want to buy supplies for your caravan so they don't starve, you gotta do that. There's a few issues I have with this system a little bit. Namely, one, that I feel it goes back to that right or wrong choice before that determines a lot of renown. 2, the supply system I was not a fan of, because I did a good job of keeping my supplies up in the beginning, but as I played through more of the game, it really didn't seem like there was that much of a penalty for running out of supplies. I mean, sure, people in your caravan will die, but that doesn't seem to really make much of a difference, honestly. Early on, there's like large-scale battles where it's like, you have 600 units, and the enemy has 700. What will you do as commander of this army? They stopped doing that like halfway through the game, so I don't know if the people in your caravan is more of a score thing. It's not like a keeping morale up thing either, because about halfway through the game, it's pretty much impossible to keep your morale up. I mean, it just drops like a rock, and you'd have to rest and sit there so long to keep it at regular values that you just don't even bother. So your morale's already at an all-time low before the food shortage happens. I didn't feel the impact like that, like I felt I should have. Really, there's only 2 other gripes I have with the combat. Is the interface feels a little bit clumsy at times. The characters dying in battle didn't have nearly the impact I thought it should have. This isn't a game where if they die, they're gone for good. What happens is they die and then they're injured, which they need 3 days to fully rest up, and basically their strength is reduced by 3. It gets, as they rest up, if there's 1 day left, it's only 1 strength reduction, which honestly isn't that much of a penalty. And the game tries to tell you should rest and wait it out, which burns through supplies. But honestly, I can't remember many times where that was ever necessary. It's almost always 3 days before you get into the next encounter, except in a few key situations. And even then, 3 strength is a big reduction, and maybe if you were playing in hard difficulty, it would impact you a lot more, but it was never that crazy to me. The combat overall isn't that challenging. I wouldn't say it's challenging on normal. There were a few times I died, but there was only 1 time where I got party wiped going through the main game. Now, I know someone who did go through hard, and it sounds like then you get a really big challenge, and then you really gotta watch out. Normal, it seems like a good challenging difference. I've played a lot of turn-based strategy games like this, so if you haven't played as much, normal would probably be a pretty decent challenge for you. Now, I absolutely love the art style of this game. It's very cartoony, but it totally captures the Viking aesthetic. And I'm not even someone who necessarily really gets into this aesthetic that much, but I really enjoyed it here. It's really well done. The artwork is, when you're talking to people, the artwork for all the characters and the aesthetic of the game as a whole is just fantastic. And the music is pretty great too, although I do feel that the audio mixing at times was a little bit odd. Like sometimes the music was really loud. But that's also because you developers didn't give me audio sliders to adjust, and that makes me very sad as someone who records an LP of it. Overall, I wholeheartedly recommend this game if you're a turn-based strategy fan, and even if you're not, you might find something to like here if you really like a good character story and interactions between characters. Especially if you're someone who likes, the choice system where it's like your story shapes over time and your choices will have an impact on the overarching plot and situations you find yourselves in. There's a lot of, there's some things that I feel like could be done a little bit better. You know what? Maybe that'll be fixed in the Banner Saga 2. Overall, for it being an indie title and priced fairly low, available on just about everything, this is definitely a game that the people should check out. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Till next time, later everyone.